Okay, now for one of those projects I probably should be tackling in the morning rather than in the afternoon, or rather in the evening. More repairs to the AM stereo transmitter. Unfortunately, I suffer from anxiety and panic attacks. And I was having a panic attack earlier on and just trying to run around and range testing the transmitter. Unfortunately, I came back to the smell of smoke and this. If it'll focus. Yeah. This is a burned resistor. What happened was there was a short somewhere in the transmitter, probably in the power supply stage, because this 10 ohm resistor actually supplies power to the rest of the transmitter. This is another one that's a bit less burned, but still replaced it anyway. For anyone who has never smelled a burned resistor, it's extremely unpleasant. And that's the new one that's going in. The only problem is, I'll flip it over. It's in this section right in here, where we have a lot of components. And unfortunately, because of having a lot of components in this section, what can and oftentimes does happen is you end up with solder bridges. I had one in that area right there that I'm trying to show. Unfortunately, trying to show with a non-cooperative camera. Unfortunately, while I was desoldering the resistor, a blob of solder ended up shorting out these traces right over here. So I used the desoldering iron to remove them. To remove the excess solder. Oh, and that, by the way, that's left over from another project. I replaced the capacitors in a Sony SRF A100 AM stereo, FM stereo radio. My particular receiver is somewhere around 40 years old, and those are the original capacitors that were in it. But back to this. I think I have corrected the problem that was in this area right here, right about where my finger is. But I need to take a look at another transmitter just to be sure. And although the next thing I have to do is, well, this is kind of strange how this goes in. The resistor makes a bend here and then connects with a capacitor that's on the top side of the board. Unfortunately, it's really tricky, so I'll have to do it off camera. Well, there it is. Job's done. It's this black wire right here which goes to the resistor. This is a pretty tricky job, which is kind of why I had to do it off camera. And please excuse the rapid breathing earlier on. I'm still coming out of the panic attack and still a bit on edge. I always am whenever this happens. This big blob here, on the other hand, though, that really can be there. That's just ground. Everything there is supposed to go to that spot. Everything connected to that spot is supposed to go there. But anyway, the next stage is going to be to analyze another transmitter where the circuitry, or the traces rather, in this area are complete, and figure out exactly what I need to do. I'd rather not power it on the way it is, otherwise I will have another burned resistor. Another one of these. So rather than taking the chance, I'm just gonna call it quits for now and analyze picture of a transmitter that has all the traces intact. This one is uncommon, but there are probably about 200 of them in existence. And I have very detailed pictures of the underside of the PCB on these things. Here we are on day 2 with the transmitter. I just did an inspection of the wiring on the underside and it looks good. So this thing is safe to operate. This is actually a pretty clever addition right here. This is what's called a variable frequency oscillator. It's actually a replacement for the fact that this transmitter takes quartz crystals, which would normally go in that socket right there. Only one pin is needed from the VFO in order to get into the in order to get the transmitter to work. And there is the antenna tuning circuit. And the ground, which you need for any appreciable range. I'm going to reconnect that now that I know that everything is okay. Because it powered on without the new resistor smoking, I'm going to see if it'll actually output a signal. And if it can, well, I would say the repair was successful. And there it is, all powered on. That tone you're hearing is actually coming from this. What that indicates is it's generating an AM carrier. So basically it means I need to try inputting audio, because I would say the repairs are done. If it's actually working this far, outputting a carrier, it's going to output audio.